Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It's Christina from Our Wood Home. I've got another edition of vintage advice for you today. If you missed my previous video in this series, I'll have it linked at the end of this one so you can watch that later. But this is a series that I've just started where I read some vintage advice from different publications or bulletins throughout the years. I think it's a really interesting topic and I'm just so curious to learn about how homemakers did things efficiently in years gone by. And when I say vintage advice, I truly mean vintage. This bulletin that I'm reading you today is from April 18th, 1933. It was a radio broadcast in a segment called Housekeeper's Chat, and it was put out by the United States Department of Agriculture. The subject of this radio bulletin is how farm women are cutting household costs. And it's from a radio talk by Miss Florence Hall, Extension Service, USDA. Now, keep in mind as I read this, this was published and put out in 1933, so some of the advice might seem a little bit strange, or some of the things that they talk about might seem a little bit strange, but I think it's still really interesting and it's fun to learn about how homemakers did things in different times and to see if we can maybe implement any of these cost-saving measures in present day. So I'm going to start reading the bulletin now. Since most housekeepers these days have the job of running their homes on slim pocketbooks, we're all interested in how the other fellow is doing it, and we're all glad to get helpful ideas from others with economy problems like our own. Miss Florence Hall, Extension Home Economist for the Department of Agriculture, who keeps in close touch with homemakers in many different states, gave a talk the other day on this very subject. According to her, women from coast to coast are returning to old-fashioned home arts, are learning to live on what they have, and make what they can't buy, as our grandmothers did. Miss Hall quotes a New England farm woman who said recently, "A day in my life in the year 1933 is like a day in my grandmother's time. My neighbors and I are canning and drying fruits and vegetables. We are canning and curing meats, making butter and cheese, and baking our own bread. We are making overcoats and dresses. We have even revived the art of making soap." This sort of thing is going on in farm homes all over the country. With farm incomes reduced about 60% since 1928, farm women are making the best possible use of what they have on hand. How are they doing it? Well, first, they are using their home gardens and orchards. They find this is one of the best ways to save. The average family needs about $150 worth of vegetables and fruits during the year. Often the farm family can produce most of this at home. A West Virginia woman recently said, "We plan our garden according to directions by the Extension Service to ensure a plentiful supply of fresh vegetables and fruits during the summer months, with enough to can and store so that we may have variety even in the late winter and early spring. This is good health insurance, for it helps give our family resistance to colds and other diseases. We have little money to spend these days, but we do set a good table for our family and friends who happen in at mealtime." Many farm families did their own butchering this year. Livestock brings a low market price and is consuming feed. It is wise economy in many cases to transfer meat on the hoof to cans. One woman reports, "Instead of selling meat, I canned roast beef, beef steak, corned beef, and meat for soups. This provided the family with $21 worth of meat. We can chicken and pork much the same way, and find that juices from the canned meats make delicious gravies of good flavor and rich brown color." Home butchering leaves quantities of surplus fat. Many housewives are using this fat in making soap. In the state of Kansas alone, 5,000 women cooperated with the Extension Service and produced more than 18 tons of homemade soap last year. 5 years ago, homemade bread was fast disappearing from the American diet, but now bread making is coming back into the home because of shortage of cash. A Colorado woman who has attended the bread making demonstration said, "I am making good bread and rolls now. My family likes them, and I am saving about $15 a year." Cheese making is also being revived. Many farms have a surplus of milk, so old cheese presses are in action once again. An Arkansas woman made 40 pounds of cheese last year, which she valued as being worth $8 on the family food budget. Farm women everywhere are asking for help in making over clothes, especially coats and dresses. As a result, a new kind of sewing circle, the clothing clinic, is flourishing. In these clinics, the women remodeled their old garments and learned how to give a 1933 appearance to a 1932 dress. In one county in Massachusetts, women saved $600 last fall by making children's winter coats and hats from old material. You can see that the farm homemaker nowadays is carrying a heavy load, but the men of the family, and the children too, are helping. More members of the family are at home, and all are doing their share in gardening, canning, butchering, and home sewing. The men and boys have also been helping to beautify home grounds at small costs by the use of native shrubs and plants. Since money for recreation is scarce, the rule this year is family fun at no cost. Books, magazines, games, and puzzles are being exchanged, thus doing duty for several families. The idea of barter is spreading to include service and special talents, as well as material things. A Kansas woman recently did a day's sewing in exchange for homemade soap. In one rural community, a local girl who had been teaching music in the city had returned home without employment. Her neighbors suggested she give music lessons to their children, taking her pay in garden stuff. In another community, a landscape artist who was out of work began helping the whole neighborhood make their homes more attractive. Her pay comes in the form of home-canned vegetables and meats. Farm homes are having to cut costs, but at the same time, many of them are giving more attention to increasing efficiency and to stopping losses and waste. Their efforts are bringing about better living conditions now and will provide a firm foundation for more prosperous homes as soon as general economic conditions improve. By the way, if you want to help on planning low-cost menus or on preparing low-cost dishes, or if you want suggestions about making over old clothes, the Bureau of Home Economics has some emergency leaflets to send you. Write either to this station or directly to the Bureau of Home Economics at Washington, D.C. Did you learn anything interesting from that news bulletin? I think it's so cool how all these different homemakers were getting together and kind of having a working bee, so to speak. They were doing different tasks to contribute to their overall budget, and I think they were having a really good sense of community doing all these tasks together. It's something I would definitely love to see happen again in present day, and I think we are kind of making a shift back to those more old-fashioned skills. If you look online, you'll see tons of videos and blogs and even social media posts about people canning and preserving food and sewing and gardening and all that. So I think we are going to be seeing more and more homemakers getting back to those ancestral tasks. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments below. You can also just give the video a thumbs up. That's always appreciated. And if you like what you see here on my channel, I hope that you will consider subscribing. And if you do, be sure to turn on the notifications by clicking that little bell icon. That way, anytime I post anything on my channel, you will get a notification about that. Thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.